Good evening. It is 6:31, and I would like to call this meeting to order. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Vantage Theronot, Wilson, Coert,
Present.
Esri,
Here.
Farney,
Here.
Fortato, Greer,
Here.
Hanauer Friedman, Locke, Lockshin,
Here.
Michaels, Owen,
Here.
Pugh,
Present.
Rodriguez,
Here.
Rogers,
Present.
Sexton, Smith,
Here.
Storr,
Present.
Straub, Taylor,
Here.
Thorslin, Carter.
Here. Thank you. We have a quorum. Can I get a motion for the approval of the agenda? First by Mr. Owens, second by Ms. Rogers. Is there open for discussion? Ms. Vice Chair Locke?
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to move Roman numeral 9 F2 and 3 to follow Roman numeral 9 H4 so that we can put closed session at the end of the meeting.
I'll second that.
First by Locke and second by Lockshin. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, same size. Can I get a motion to, can I get a vote, or can I get a motion to amend the agenda?
We voted on the amended agenda. Now we need to vote.
On the amendment. Okay, can I get a motion for the amendment of the agenda? First by Ms. Beth, second, Smith? Is that right? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I get an approval for the minutes for September 10th, 2024 regular meeting? First by Locke, second by Smith, or Sexton, sorry. So close in last name. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I get a motion for the approval of September 24th, 2024 special finance meeting? First by Ms. Coert, second by Dr. Storr. All open for discussion. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Public participation. I have Mr. George Danos.
County Board, County Executive, you lost $2 million. You want to make it up with additional taxes. You want to get rid of the elected auditor who brought this to the public's attention. You want to, or perhaps might, try to transform a truth-finding commission into yet another show trial. Is this not yet another, would this not yet be another case of kill the messenger? You tried to prevent me from discussing price estimates for the courthouse software and even censured me for researching the market, using faux legalese and calling my price discovery interference. You delayed my presentation on the state of county finances until April 18, and you turned your back on me when I presented. I was told to stay in your lane. Director of Administration Michelle Jett countermanded my request that information technology upload my 33-page report on the state of the county as an addendum to the April board packet. So I placed that report at my website, danosforauditor.com, and that is where my foregone interest disclosures reside. You've shunned me 3 times. Board members, county executive, I am not your subordinate. When you fail to treat me as a peer, I am forced to go above your head directly to the voters who pay for this county. You are failed stewards who seek to sideline not just me personally, but the very office that speaks truth about your spending and your tax hikes. You've shown yourself incapable of analysis, and you shut your ears to mine. When I go to the people, it is only then that you are forced to listen to my words and to look at my numbers. If it weren't for your current elected auditor, your $2.1 million in lost interest would never have seen the light of day. My office is of critical importance, and yet you seek to bury your failures with its elimination. Whose duty is it to invest? According to the Illinois compiled statutes, counties are authorized to invest the funds and public monies in the custody of the county treasurer. I brought up this missed opportunity as far back as July 5th to the proper authority and allowed ample time for that authority to move the money in the intervening 3 months. But whose duty is it to take from the reports from the treasurer and to ask insightful questions? County board and county executive, that is on you. It is the duty of this board foremost, that of finance chairs Stephanie Furtado and John Farney, to advise and consent. They have neglected to do so, and so I did it. Steve Summers, Michelle Jett, it is your duty to compile the budget, refund bonds, and to track revenue. You even recommend the elimination of the auditor and placing all accounting duties under your finance director. You claim you will audit yourselves. You will never do so, and that is why we have an elected auditor. I am George Danos. I am a CPA. I am sworn to uphold the ethics of my profession and to be unflinching in my objectivity and in my devotion to taxpayer interest. I leave it to the voters to decide whether I've served them well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Denos. Is there any other communications amongst the board? Dr. Storr?
Thank you. I'll simply mention that the Environment and Land Use Committee last Thursday referred a resolution for a 12-month moratorium on projects to inject carbon dioxide beneath the Mahomet sole source aquifer. The resolution was passed unanimously and will go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and through their hearing process and all of the other process associated with that. The resolution will likely come to the board perhaps at the February 20th, 2025 board meeting. Just as since this is a matter of topic that you may encounter among folks during the campaign and so forth.
Thank you for those communications. Ms. Taylor?
Eric Thorsland couldn't be here tonight, but he wanted me to read this into communications. And I'm supposed to do it with feeling, so I apologize. As a member of pretend I'm Eric. As a member of the Lincoln Legacy Committee, I hope some of those listening have time, October 24th, 2024, to attend one of the following events. The marking of the anniversary of the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. You should have a card describing the event at your tables tonight, and thank you, Megan. See details and times on the card. Also, later that day is the Half Century Club 100th Annual Dinner at 5:30 p.m. at the Unitarian Universalist Church, 309 Green Street, Urbana. This event celebrates the early settlers to Champaign County and helps plan for future celebrations. Payment is $35 and due October 15th, which is today. Mail it to Steve Beckett, 508 South Broadway Avenue, Urbana, Illinois, 61801, or email Kat Bork at that's with a K, by the way, katdenbk@gmail.com. End communication.
Thanks, Ms. Taylor. Any more communications from the board? I have some communications. This week has been something else in Champaign County as Champaign County Board Chair. There's been many questions asked of me that I do not have the answer to. Conveniently, our executive is not here this evening, as I did want to pose some questions regarding the treasurer and the situation with the lost income. We have so many personal beefs across this board. It's shameful that we're not paying attention to the county business at hand. That's what we're here for. And whenever you think of me, don't never think that I am angry. I am more disappointed because we are a board of adults that's been acting out like kids. We are not promoting each other with communications amongst each other. And it's a clear sign that these are the reasons why we're in the turmoil that we're in. We're asking the public for more money at a time that we could have potentially gained money. I'm not the smartest person on the board, but I do know that that was a missed opportunity, and I see it basically because of lack of communication amongst the offices in this building. So I would like our board members to think, what are the real reasons why we're here? Are we here to better our community and be a voice for our constituents, or are we here for petty beefs? Because it's really getting out of hand, and it's embarrassing. It really is. To be a part of a public body and your constituents ask you questions and you don't have the answer to. That's embarrassing. So that's my communications for the board. Moving on to policy and personnel and appointments, Dr. Storr.
Thank you, Chair Carter. The monthly HR report is in your packet and on file. Next item is a resolution authorizing an agreement for a joint labor management deferred compensation committee, and that too is in your packet. I hope that some of you had a chance to look at it. It looks like they have done quite a bit of thinking about who should be on the committee and so forth. Mr. Farney? I'll make the motion to approve it. Thank you, Mr. Farney. We have a second. Ms. Locke, thank you. Discussion.
I'm just here to answer any questions.
Recognize Ms. Michelle Jett. Would you care to say a few words about this? I'm sure you had some involvement.
So we've had deferred comp since the 80s, which is commendable for the county. We don't have the highest participation rate, so part of this is to encourage more employee participation by giving them some investment in how the deferred comp is invested and managed, and giving them some more insight into how the program works. And as of right now, if they wanted to participate in the deferred comp committee, they would have to do it on their own personal time, like on their break time or outside of work hours, whereas now for the union members, if they're appointed to the deferred comp committee, it would be part of their work time, which I think is a big deterrent to employees participating in this committee. So we're just trying to put together some structure for a program we've had for a while that I think has not gotten as much attention and focus as it should for the benefit that it provides for our employees.
Ms. Locke?
So I have just a question, like deep in the minutia. On page 17, enlisting the members of the committee, 5B, it says one of the members is the county auditor. Do we have a plan in place for if the public votes to abolish the auditor? Do we have a plan in place for who would fill that vacancy?
Well, I think we could just remove that position because we would probably need to come back and amend this to remove that position and then update the budget director title to the finance director.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pugh?
Use your microphone, please.
Same thing, point 5, it said 7 regular members. I'm only seeing one AFSCME listed, and I'm counting 6 people. Is that a misprint, or am I missing something?
We have 2 FOP units.
Do we? Okay.
So when we
Okay.
say AFSCME and FOP, it's actually 3, not 2.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Farney?
Who currently does our
deferred compensation. What company is that? Is that nationwide?
Yeah, so to enroll as an employee, it's nationwide, and then I believe sometime last year, we picked up a company to manage the investment portion of the process.
Okay. Will this committee be looking at other entities to do those things at some point, or is this simply for employee education type things?
This committee would be empowered to say, hey, we want to put out an RFP, we want to look at other companies, we don't like how this is being handled, or we don't like the service we're getting. They absolutely could put that forward, and it would be like anything else. They could do the process, but it would come to the board, and the board would have to approve the change.
Any other comments? I'll simply say that
Nothing, she has a question.
oh, Ms. Furtado? No, sorry, I was terrible. Okay. I benefited from this, and I surprised myself by working longer than working at the university longer than I expected. So these things kind of sneak up on you, and I encourage participation in these to kind of help with retirement. There being no other rambling comments or from myself or anyone else, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Next item is appointment of Lloyd Esri to St. Joseph Number 3 Drainage District, term September 1st, 2024 through August 31st, 2027. Mr. Farney?
I move approval.
Okay, I'm looking at Mr. Esri, and he's just got a grin. Okay. Ms.
I was going to say I would second.
Thank you. Discussion is just out of curiosity, because I've been asked.
Father, and he's been on, it probably technically should be in italics, because he's been a Drainage District Number 3 commissioner for I don't know how long. I think at least back in the 90s, if not maybe even into the late 80s.
Well, our cropland production depends on the work of these good people. There being no other discussion, anything further to add? Okay. There being no other discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? There being none, that's a unanimous. Next item is the appointment of Dr. Neil Sharma to the Developmental Disabilities Board for an unexpired term ending June 30th, 2027. Beth Vanich there or not, thank you very much. And Dr. Don Owen, second. Any discussion? Dr. Sharma's a neurologist. I think he'd be a good addition. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? There being none, it passes unanimously. The current vacant appointments, and it's for drainage districts, cemeteries, the usual sorts of things, and I think we may even have a mental health appointment. There being no further business, Chair Carter, I turn them back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Storr. Justice and Social Services, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you. Oh,
Well, apparently I forgot, overlooked that. Designation, the three items for the consent agenda are items Roman numeral 7, A, 2, 3, A, and B. that get it? Thank you. I'm sorry.
All right, I'm going to start now. Item A, we have the monthly reports for Emergency Management Agency, August and September of 2024. We have the Public Defender for September of 2024. As a reminder, all reports are available on each department's webpage. Item B, we have the Rosecrans reentry reports. This is information only. The financial report and the program report, both for August of 2024. Does anybody have any other business? I do not have a chair's report, and I have nothing to be placed on the consent agenda. Thank you.
Finance, Dr. Furtado.
First off, we have Budget Amendment BUA 2024-9443, Fund 2091 Animal Control, Department 047 Animal Control, increased appropriations 42,410, increased revenue 0, increased operational cost and the cost to replace mobile field radios. Do I have a motion? Mr. Esri, second. Ms. Taylor. Discussion? Seeing none, I do have one. This is directed at admin, at Travis. I'd like to make sure that our budget is, I'd like to maybe revisit the animal control budget to see across these categories, are we adequately budgeting based on this updated information? Do you understand what I'm asking? Like, do we anticipate these expenses to be inflated again, and have we accounted for that in our 2025 budgeting? You don't have to answer that right now. That's just,
Yeah, I'll review it. I just wanted to make sure you were talking about 25.
Yeah.
This was also mostly caused by the unexpected expense of having to replace the radios this year. So ideally, we would not be seeing this kind of thing. However, I am going to, again, just remind everyone, we consistently are seeing an uptick in animals. So our costs are just going to continue to rise at animal control with the amount of animals that we have been moving through the facility at this point.
Yeah, and if you recall, this was an issue that came before the board almost every year there for a while, was we never quite had enough money in animal control. And if you remember, a few board members were like, do we even need animal control? This is when we were all on Zoom, and the state's attorney jumped on and started yelling at all of us that we had to have animal control. So I just want to make sure that we're budgeting it adequately. Okay. That was a fun meeting. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next up, Budget Amendment BUA 2024-1069, Fund 10080, General Corporate, and 2106, Public Safety Sales Tax, Department 071 Public Properties, and 010 County Board, increased appropriations $17,078.75, increased revenue 0, to repay the accounts used for the cost of the boiler burner replacement project and for completion of the recommended boiler boil-out procedure. Do I have a motion? Ms. Lokshin, second. Mr. Sexton, discussion, and I'm probably going to privilege Mr. Smith, who actually knows what this is.
From the boil out, I'll keep it as simple as I can. When you go in to retube a condenser or a boiler, you're going to get your metal shavings and stuff inside it. That's not counting the previous service where you get scaling. I don't know if you've ever opened up your water heater and looked at it. That scaling insulates. So the whole point of the boil out procedure is to replace those tubes with new tubes, clean out the inside so you get good heat transfer, clean out any contaminants, anything that you'd have to do with fretting with those metal shavings. It extends the life of your boiler. To just go in and open the boiler up, do a bunch of work, close it up and put it in service, you're probably not going to get the life out of it without that cleaning being done ahead of time. Is that simple enough?
I see Samantha and then Don.
How often is that done, like maintenance?
Typically, you'll watch your water chemistries as your boiler. It's not something you just put water in and look, but your water chemistries will say, hey, we're probably getting some scaling. You can look at your temperatures in and out, and if you see that there isn't good heat transfer, then you can say it's basically done as needed. It's not that something you do on a periodic basis. You'd use your equipment performance to tell you, we need to go do this. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Done.
We haven't said where this boiler is located. I just want to go on record for the viewing audience. It's at the courthouse. And is there one boiler that is there? Two, okay.
Phone?
I can talk louder. But there was just one being retubed, correct? Two being
Yes.
retubed?
No.
Both of them?
Wasn't it? I thought it was just one. Oh, one then the other? Okay. This
Okay.
is why we have a fantastic facilities committee who all knows different bits of what was happening there. Thank you.
Yeah.
I believe Ms. Taylor, Leah has a question.
Sorry, I forgot my question, but now I remembered it. During caucus, I did wonder why this is coming from, like, I've never seen this, but I'm also not, like, Miss Finance. I mean, why this is coming from two different funds. I mean, I get public safety sales tax, but I don't understand why it's going into those two funds. Is this something you can explain, Travis?
I can try. It's almost all public safety sales tax fund. They did have one cost that came out of the general fund, and I would have to pull the invoice to see exactly what that was for, but one of the multiple invoices they pulled out of the general fund, but without pulling that invoice, I'm not sure the reason, but a huge portion of it is public safety sales tax. And it probably maybe all should have been, and that's why we are reimbursing the general fund.
Okay.
Any other discussion? I renew my objections of Mr. Smith leaving this body, but I don't believe we get to vote on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next up, budget transfer BUA 202010168, Fund 2500, County Grant Fund, Department 075, General County, amount $13,000. Reason, reallocation of fringe benefit appropriation to prevent loss of funds. This is in regard to the gun safety grant that we've received. The person who we've hired to do the staffing of that project does not need benefits. And so therefore, we are reallocating that money so that we can keep the amount of grant money that we've gotten and put more into the program. Any discussion? Oh, Jenny.
No, did we need a?
Oh, a first and a second? Yep, that'd probably be helpful. First, all right, Jenny and Jen. Then I'll come back to you. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. The auditor, as always, is on every single cow. There's some auditor-related issues that are under the chair's report. Anything going once, going twice? Treasurer, I want to point out that the issue surrounding the interest is under the chair's report. Is there any other issues that the board would like to ask of the treasurer? Okay. If it's okay with folks, I'm going to do 2 through 4, then I'm going to do 5 through 7, then I'm going to do 9 through 12. I believe that's correct. Is that okay? What?
Can you use the microphone?
Yes. Sorry. You're right. 8 through 12. I misinterpreted the line on that I drew. So resolution authorizing the cancellation of the appropriate certificate of purchase, permanent parcel 30-059-0057, permanent parcel 04-006-0247, and permanent parcel 14-024-004. Do I have a motion? Ed and first, Mike second. Discussion. Mr. Storr, I believe you had something?
Thank you. Yes, it happens that my colleague, Ms. Rogers, and I were contacted by a homeowner, and she is a mobile home owner, but her house resides on a pad at a mobile home park. And this is probably the most comprehensive letter of complaint I have ever witnessed. And the lady pointed out that in spite of the fact that there are many programs to help people who have homes on their own property, own land, that there are no programs for people who own a mobile home on a rental pad at a mobile home park. And this denies them the opportunity to get involved in programs through the Regional Planning Commission, the Land Bank, or even any other entity. And it's kind of a loophole or a oversight that deserves attention. And I consulted with John Hall, our Director of Planning and Zoning, Ms. Lisa Benson at the Regional Planning Commission, and Mr. Davis at the Land Bank. And not only did they agree that this was a well-researched letter, and about 3 or 4 pages long, but that the lady was correct, that there is no available funds to help somebody like for winterization and so forth. And so we agreed that that this is not a matter that can be handled through the county board, but has to be brought before, has to be changed at the federal level, and we supported her to go to Representative Baczynski, who represents this area, and make her case there, and that should she want input or testimony or something from some of the other agencies involved, they said that they were quite willing to speak to this oversight. We've seen an awful lot of trouble at mobile home parks with the loss of local managers and owners, and the purchase of the mobile home parks by holding companies, for goodness sakes, in other states, which do not provide the level of maintenance and may not even have a local property manager. I call the board's attention. I know that many of you are already aware of this, and just to remind all of us of this particular problem. And no further comments.
Thank you. It's a fitting day because there's a lot of these today. Samantha?
I wanted to echo Dr. Storr. Also, there's no assistance available for those that don't have traditional mortgages. It's something that I found out during COVID. So contract for deed sales are exempt from getting any kind of financial assistance put towards their mortgage payment. So that would be something that I would definitely add as well, Dr. Storr, because I definitely found out to be true during COVID.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same. Ayes have it. Next up, a resolution authorizing the execution of a deed of conveyance of the county's interest on real estate, permanent parcel 200334480003, permanent parcel 41-20-11-226-019, permanent parcel 42-20-12-203-012. Do I have a motion? Mr. Smith, Jennifer Locke, second. Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Resolution authorizing, opposed? Seeing none, ayes have it. Resolution authorizing the county executive to assign a mobile home tax sales certificate of purchase, permanent parcel 11-013-0055. Resolution authorizing the county executive, or permanent parcel 15-025-0700. Permanent parcel 30-057-0005. Permanent parcel 30-057-0008. Permanent parcel 30-058-0295. Do I have a motion? Ed, Don, discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, moving on to the county clerk. You have a memo. It is white on your, with further explaining. Approval to release RFP 2024-005, Champaign County Clerk, voter registration and poll book software and vendor support. Do I have a motion? Mr. Farney, Beth, second. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. State's Attorney, resolution agreeing to participate in the service program of the Office of the State's Attorney Appellate Prosecutor for 2025. Do I have a motion? Leah, second. Jamala, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? County Executive, recommendation to the County Board to receive and place on file the fiscal year 2025 tentative budget. Do I have a motion? Aaron, second. Carolyn, discussion? A thank you to Travis and the finance staff and all of the hard work that you put into this moment. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Seeing none, it carries. I'll remind you that this will then be taken off of consent in November, and we will finalize. Skipping down to other business, Chair's report. So I believe you've probably, well, you heard from the auditor in public comment. I thought that the board would want to have a conversation with the treasurer, so she is here today to have a conversation specifically about the ARPA, but if you have any other questions about our investment policy. And in case you had not had a chance to read it, the investment policy is actually in your board packet, which I think it's probably a good opportunity for us to review that on a more macro level as well. CJ, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything or if you just wanted to address any board questions. We could do it either way.
No, I definitely want to address any questions, but I'll preface this because, again, I've heard a lot of interesting commentary and supposition about what's actually taking place. First and foremost, the missed opportunity to gain more interest is definitely an oversight on my part. I own it. At the end of the day, I am the chief investment officer. At the end of the day, things don't get invested unless I'm okay with it. So at the end of the day, missed out on $2 million. I'm not gonna say that I think that his numbers are wrong, because again, it is what it is. But at the same time, for me, I'm more disappointed in myself because I missed out on it. But at the same time, I'm not gonna lie and say I wasn't angry initially, because again, no one likes to be told, hey, this is how much you lost as a campaign flyer. Like, so it is what it is. But because, again, I'm more interested in, again, helping Champaign County and not sticking with the bad stuff, whatever, those funds have since been pushed into a fund account. And then even aside from that, though I had it delayed until 2025, 2 years ago, when I was rewriting the investment policy, one of the things that I wanted to implement was an investment policy committee. Time, other things that I had to focus on, drainage, 6-year deep dive, audits, other things that kept on coming up. I diverted that to next year. I'm bringing it back to this year because at this point now, I don't want another treasurer to be in this situation where someone uses something that they oversaw as a bone or something to kind of bolster their standing. So that's what I'm trying to avoid at this point. Secondary to that, comments that have been thrown out there, the reasons why one thing versus another, not factual. I did not say, hey, let me just miss out on an opportunity to gain some more money for the county. That is not what I've been operating under, and most of the individuals around here know that. It's one of the reasons why I brought on Meter to help to make sure that I was doing more as far as earning the county money. Sure, we could have had another $2 million, but that doesn't completely say, hey, I didn't gain more than $2 million from what I was doing. And again, all in accordance with investment policy because one of them is actual interest-bearing accounts. But either way, missed opportunity on me. I trust that the individuals that I have in mind for that investment policy committee are individuals that they're key in the community and they will actually be able to give me an objective look that comes from experts when it comes to that kind of thing. So that's similar to what we have with our bonds with Raymond Jones and stuff like that. You'll have somebody who that's their focus. They can kind of tell you what you're missing, is what it is. Comments made about when the auditor asked a question about this. And I think I responded to the email from the chair about the questions that people were asking about what was going on.
And I just wanted to tell
Sure.
you that I knew you were coming this evening.
Yep.
I did receive your response.
Okay,
So
all
I
right.
was hoping that you would go through those
Sure,
questions.
I can. That's
Okay,
fine.
and just share your answer with the board.
It's a wonderful
Thank
day.
you.
No worries. Yes, it's that sad, and I do have it on my phone. Depressing. So the questions that I was asked by the chair, the first was, why were they being notified through the media? That's a question for the auditor. It's a long and short, whatever. As far as the executive form of government, who decides what communications pass down to the board, each independent elected official has the ability to communicate as they see fit. So while to a professional courtesy dictates that you would say something to individuals before going to the media, that's not a requirement. It is what it is. When was it discovered? Now, this is kind of weird because I did respond, but I thought more of it. I always knew that I could be doing better with all of the different functions of the office if given more space and time. To learn that it was this amount, I'm not going to front. I'm more disappointed in myself than anyone else could be because I legit missed this. But I didn't actually find out about this number until someone sent me a screenshot of campaign literature. So when the auditor did come into my office, and I believe this was the end of August, beginning of September, and made a comment asking me about it, I was kind of like, it was a little bit surprising to me because at this point, we're in August, believe it was end of August, beginning of September. And I checked with some of my folks because he never comes into my office. So it was a rare occurrence and they were kind of like, what is he doing here? And he said, hey, do you know you could have been earning more? And I was kind of like, at the time when he mentioned this, I was like, what are you doing? Because I was well aware of the fact that another agreed upon action that was supposed to take place beginning the year before hadn't been done in 7 months. So I'm like, why are you asking me about investments when you haven't even done this thing that's supposed to be taking place? And again, I might have been a little bit more harsh than I normally am, but again, I believe that he knew I was joking with him because I did explain to him my thought process, but that was never actually mentioned. So this was in July when I actually moved funds to the higher interest-bearing CD. him, the executive, and a couple of other individuals, I believe it was him, the executive, the director of administration, and the budget director, were all on this email saying, hey, I'm moving this money to go in to do this. And I believe that might be where he started looking into things to see if there was something going on. At the end of the day, I was being very transparent about what I was doing, so didn't think anything of it. Who knew about this? And again, that goes back to him, because again, I think he did the research based on this email that, again, in my mind, I'm telling you what I'm doing, so there's no gray area. And it's all well within what the policy, the investment policy allows for. So.
Can you tell me again who was all copied on that email?
You, oh, sorry, I didn't put enough. It's you, Steve, Stephanie, so the county board chair, county executive, finance committee chair, and finance committee vice chair. Those
Thank
are
you.
individuals. So, what was next? Is it too late to switch accounts, this be fixed? Like I said, I already opened the fund account and everything but a 2 million cushion, which is usually what I've done for other funds, have been moved to where they can actually gain more interest. Missed opportunity is just that, it's missed. And let's be clear, I didn't lose the county money. I missed the opportunity to gain the county more money. And I feel like that kind of need to circle back to that, because investments, safety, equal yield, yes, could I have yielded more? No question, but I was well within the policy.
Can you tell me why the monies were put in an account in Indiana?
So we have 3 accounts that serve as the major operating funds for the county. One bank is in Illinois, well, 2 banks are in Illinois, and one actually is headquarters in Indiana. There are branches here as well. So it's not like hey, I sent money to Indiana. Please don't say that. I'm like, it's not like I sent money to Indiana. The branch that we have here is the one that we actually use. Sorry, do you have any more questions about that? Okay, sweet. She asked at the time of when ARPA was coming in, was there a conversation about investments? There were conversations about, hey, we might probably need to look at what we're gonna do as far as investments. But at the time when we got them, rates were horrible. Initially, I put things into a higher interest-bearing CD because that was giving me the highest rate at the time. And then moving forward, and I'll admit it, whatever I, again, was constantly adjusting. And in my mind at the time, I think I just was more worried about making sure that I was getting the office functional than working on those things. Not to say I neglected it, I just could have put way more attention into specifically ARPA, because the rest of the funds were actually gaining well. But in this one regard, like I said, I missed the opportunity to get more, is what it comes down to. What else? Next question. Transparency. Again, if I had known that's how much money we were missing out on, then sure, I would have said something. Again, definitely would have said something to the finance chair so she wasn't waiting for me to or operating in the dark with what she's trying to do. I'm not sure exactly why the auditor decided to go this. I mean, I know there's a lot of contention and things going on, so I get it. At the same time, just like I had no problem making sure he was CC'd on this, I kind of felt like that would have been a good idea to inform the other individuals involved that that's what was going on. As far as responsibility for looking at how the counties invest, again, chief investment officer, so that's on me. Typically, the county auditor would be the person looking at some of these things and saying, hey, you could be doing more here and there, as has been done in the past. The only time that I've heard any mention of someone looking into this was when it was an auditor. Again, there have been lots of shifts and changes in the office, so again, I'm trying to afford a little bit of grace here. But 3 years after the fact, means I can't respond. So now that, hey, I know, okay, it's that big of an issue, I've responded and have these things in place to kind of make sure that the county doesn't have to do this again, and another treasurer doesn't have to deal with this craziness again. What else? Other questions? What could have been done different or better? And within the policy, I talked about wanting to have quarterly and annual reviews for different things. Just because well, at the end of the day, the buck still stops with me. Imagine having to build an office up from nothing and try to do day-to-day functions and also think strategy. This is like kind of it's a juggling game at best. So when I actually saw there was an issue, okay, let me fix this, because that's just how I operate. Now, could there have been, I wish that I had put this into place earlier this year, like my initial intent was, but again, time, saturation, it just never came around to it, so I had to defer it until next year. Now I'm bringing it back to this year, and it'll be one of the last things that I'll do, just to make sure that the county doesn't, again, find itself in a position where they're not gaining as much as they can. Sorry, ma'am, go ahead.
Did your staffing issue play any role in this, CJ?
Yes. Like, I'm not gonna lie and say it wasn't an issue, because the office, like I think the finance vice chair said before, the office has been undermanned for 10 years. If the office itself is already undermanned, and then you're having to play cleanup of the years before, you're dealing with an already overstressed, overtaxed office of individuals. And let's not even forget about the fact that the level of toxicity that I walked into with these individuals who were pretty much about to break. So this is way more complicated than just a missed opportunity. There are a lot of reasons. Let's be clear, no excuses. These are simply reasons that led to this, just so we're clear. Sorry, did that answer your question well? Okay, sweet. I'm like, all right. The quickest way to remedy, like I said, I'd already moved the funds to kind of make sure they are now in a fund that will gain them way more interest. But again, missed opportunity is just that, it's missed. There's no coming back, even despite the staggered plans for investment income over the next few years that are set, already in place for the county. It doesn't take away that, hey, we could have had 2 million more. So, establishment. So the committee that I talked about, whatever, and again, there are a few individuals trusted in the community, whatever, who are actually focused on investments. And those are the individuals, I'm not gonna name them because I don't wanna tip their hand or make them feel like pressured into it. But there are a few individuals that I do want to bring on because their focus is on investments. And they have the expertise and the time to kind of work through these things for the county and are interested in actually seeing the county do better. So I'm hoping that those individuals will be willing to jump. I know they'll be willing to jump on. That's what it comes down to. So it's just a matter of basically getting those confirmations that yes, they want to do it, and then we can get this rolling, and this won't actually be, there won't be a repeat of this feeling of just disappointment and disgust at what's going on. Sure.
I'm going to, just one quick point of information. Do you anticipate asking or affording an opportunity for board representation on that committee?
I think that I will admit that there's a part of me that hesitates on that a little bit. And the only reason being is that while I definitely want to make sure that we have this in place and have experts in place to do these things, what I worry about is the next individual after me, then having an individual attempting to exert their influence to pressure them into doing something that may not be something that they would be advised of otherwise. But again, the expectation is that we'll have this information that we can provide to whoever wants to see it. But then again, like I said, it's still investments, treasurer. That's how it works. And I did admittedly ask another individual to actually be a part of the process. Someone actually involved in county, and we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping to have one individual from county and then the others be not related.
Jamal?
I have two questions.
Sure.
So my first question is, so just to be clear, you discovered the issue, not the auditor?
No, I did not discover the issue.
Okay.
I was simply doing my normal, hey, let me check, see if there's some place that I can get more interest. And that's, during that courtesy check, I moved funds, and I believe that's what led him to start looking into something else.
Okay, so you just moved the funds,
Just
but
moved
you
the
didn't?
funds, yep.
Okay. And then how much interest did we earn in the 3 years?
Oh, so a little over 2 million, and that's just on the general court, on the collector side. We earned, I want to say almost maybe a little over $500,000. So again, there's interest has been being earned. It's just that, again, missed opportunity to earn more. Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming to explain that, and I sat on the board since 2017, and I remember the turmoil that we had under the previous two treasurers, and the complaints from school boards, drainage districts, and so forth. They had all of these people demanding, yelling, and rightly expecting, and somehow you were able to provide that information for them to get to get all that. I mean, you've mentioned that you spend quite a bit of your own personal time working on all of the various aspects, some of which you discovered that have been quite old, outstanding issues. And I take note of that, appreciate that, and thank you for the good service that you've done in helping to bring order to the office after walking into what almost certainly had to be a terrible, terrible circumstance.
Thanks, Dr. Sewell.
I see some questions, Mr. Owen and then Ms. Jen for Locke.
Thanks. Thanks for coming, CJ.
No worries.
This is the first time I've seen the investment policy, and I really appreciate seeing it. I was actually very interested when I started seeing stuff in the media about this, and I appreciate you explaining kind of your timeline of what happened, and you're right. You were investing the money. You didn't lose money. You lost an opportunity to gain more money. I think that's the best way to say it. Just a couple of comments about the investment policy, because I find it very interesting. And I've seen investment policies of other cities and other counties, and this one is a little bit, I'm going to say better. I make that judgment, and I'm not an investment banker.
I can't take all the credit for it, whatever. I'm like, let's be clear, I pulled like
cool. Well, you pulled
investment
good
policies
stuff.
from, I want to say at least 20 different counties
So
to kind of find what made the most sense.
one of the things I like about it is when you outline investment types, you have multiple types here. It looks like A through I, and you're not relying on a single type. And I think that's a critical thing for anybody that invests money anywhere. You know that you shouldn't be putting all your money in one spot, and you shouldn't be relying on one space. One of the things I like about that is one of the local municipalities that not local, an Illinois municipality that I've seen an investment policy for basically says that they're going to invest everything in the Illinois fund. And that to me is a problem for a number of reasons. One is I have concerns about some of the things that are invested in the Illinois Fund. And that brings me to my next point, which is I don't see anything in this investment policy about socially responsible investing. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit to that, or if that's something that you're going to be considering coming up with this new committee.
So I will say that that is something that I've been pretty cognizant of, especially support to certain things that are not popular right about now. Admittedly, when I actually initially did this, whatever, I was simply focused on just making sure that we had a lined out process. I had not brought in social justice or any of those other elements that some of these funds do actually invest in. It is something that definitely would be something that I would consider. Like, again, my spouse is very green, so I definitely would want to do things like that. But when I actually created this and revised it, my intent was to have something that was locked in, as opposed to, and I wasn't thinking of limiting the different functions. Of course, now, in light of reality and what's going on, those are considerations. I had not intended on actually attacking those while I was here.
I would encourage, and I know that your time is short, my time is shorter, but I'm not going anywhere, so I'll be happy to come back and remind people. I think it'd be a good thing to remind this committee and the entire board that socially responsible investing is a critical aspect of staying true to the values of this community and this board. And I think that oftentimes we lose sight of that when we talk about money, because all we can think of is we need more money. And I think that's a very dangerous game to play, because we oftentimes invest in things that do harm locally, whether it's companies that might be trying to drill underneath the Muhammad Aquifer, or companies that are causing genocides around the world. And I think that we need to be highly cognizant of that. And so I've just asked you that as you set up this committee,
Have those things in mind.
have
That's
those
fine.
things in mind, possibly use this as an opportunity to add a section in here about socially responsible investing. And that's what I want to say. Thank you.
I will tell you that the individuals that I'm just gonna say I'm onboarding them, because I feel like I'm probably gonna strong arm them a little bit into it. But they are individuals that are truly aware of the realities of the issues with social justice, both locally and internationally. So they are individuals that I wouldn't worry about not being cognizant of those facts and realities, and making sure that we're staying within the values of the county when it comes to that.
Jennifer. CJ, thank you for coming here, and
Well, I don't back away from my challenges, so it's okay, go
It takes
ahead.
a lot of bravery to eat the amount of crow that you are eating in front of us.
It's all good.
And thank you for owning that this was a mistake, and thank you for coming here with a plan so that this mistake won't be repeated. I cannot stress that enough. I, like Mr. Owen, I had also never been privy to the investment plan before, but in reading through it for tonight, I see that there's even orders of priority for how we're supposed to invest. And number one is safety. And you did not lose our money. You did not shrink the money. So safety was there. Liquidity, we were able to pay our bills on time. You met that. Yield is third in priority. And there was still growth. So thank you for that. And thank you for realizing that there's ways to improve and having a plan for how to improve that. One thing you mentioned when you were speaking, 3 years ago when we could have first invested in this fund, you said that we had money in bonds. At that point, was the rate
No. So
higher?
we had, when initially it came in, whatever, like the interest rates were, so sad.
Yeah, it was so low.
So at the time, I did a quick survey of like our local banks to see what they were doing as far as rates. And one of the banks actually was able to give me something pretty solid. So it's like, hey, let me put some in there. And that was really the only thing that was gaining any sort of traction at the time. But that was CDs, not bonds. Just make sure that's clear.
Okay, sorry, excuse me, yeah, CDs, okay. So, but you found a higher rate than you could have found in an investment account, like
Yes.
in a bank account or money
But
market or
let's be
something,
clear, not long after that, then we had a jump. And realistically, like I said, missed opportunity, and it was just.
But also during that time, the staffing issues,
Oh, there
where
was
you
more
were
than just
asking for us
staff.
for
It's
this
okay.
3 year, yeah.
Again, yes,
So-
there were other issues, and like I said, I don't want this to turn into like a, hey, excuse thing, whatever. There are reasons, like I keep saying, there are reasons why this is what took place. Not excusing it, because at the end of the day, whatever, it's still a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think coming here with a plan for how to fix this in the future, or how to prevent this in the future, shows that you recognize the seriousness, but also ways to address that. So thank you for coming here. Other department heads don't always come to speak to us when there's problems. They leak October surprises instead at the expense of others. So thank you for your bravery, and thank you for a plan.
I like that I'm raising my hand. I want to say a few things as finance chair. I want to echo what Jennifer said. I think at the end of the day, you're right, this is statutorily your responsibility, and I appreciate you saying that and being so forthright in what you've said. I also think there's a role of the board. And I think we put the structures in place in order to have oversight, but then didn't. And I'm finance chair, and as much as you own it, I'll own that as well. I know you told me not, because at the end of the day, we had many opportunities to weigh in. So just to give you a sense of this, our ARPA funds are in a segregated fund. We look at the interest every year in the budget. They are reported easily findable in the ACFR every year that we all review and that the auditor looks at. And every single month, the interest line, every single month, we have ARPA documents in front of us. We discussed the interest multiple times, but only in matter of expenditure, right? One point of clarification from what Treasurer Johnson said is that in July, you let us know that you were putting more money into a higher yield CD. The first time that I heard that we could have earned more money in the Illinois funds, I heard there was something about investment on the auditor's campaign literature, and then I read about it in the newspaper along with everybody else. As finance chair, the first time the word Illinois funds and that was an opportunity specifically related to ARPA interest, I read in the newspaper, and I don't believe anybody in the county was notified in any way from the auditor's office before that happened. There's several, what? Yeah, I didn't write, I'm still speaking. So I wanted to say that. I wanted to point out a couple of other things on timelines, and as CJ said, this is by way of explanation and just a sort of for you to understand the financial picture of what was going on in the country at the time. When we received our money by the end of 2022, we had spent, and I want to be very clear, the goal of the ARPA funds was to get it out into the community and to make critical infrastructure investments in the county in order to respond to the pandemic. At the end of 2022, out of our $40+ million allocation, we had spent out $6.5 million, more than 6.5, between 6.5 and $7 million. We had earned $206,995. The city of Urbana, all done, got about, significantly less than us, I think 12 million or so, had given out at the end of 2022 $36,000, a little bit over, and had earned less than $8K. So based on now, after 2022, their investments do spike up quite a bit. They clearly, at that point, I don't know what they had, by the most generous accounting for 2022, based on their budgetary documents where you could see this laid out, and their act for, where you could see it laid out, the city of Urbana earned 0.1% interest, depending on when they got their money, how you, like, that is the most generous amount of money that they could have earned. We earned 0.5% during that time period. So the initial investment decision that CJ made was the right investment decision, putting money into CDs. The specific amount of ARPA money that we have earned to date, interest, and I will say even the auditor had this in a footnote on his chart, was $595,890 in CDs as of our last meeting. I will also say I have no idea what Champaign earned because maybe I'm just missing it, but I spent a lot of time looking. I don't see where they have it in a segregated fund where it's readily available to see specifically their ARPA interest. So all of that said is we definitely, I think, put into a structure that would have allowed us as a board to see this. And we didn't, right? We didn't have that discussion. Could we have been earning more interest? And I don't think any of us here would have said, could we be putting this in the Illinois fund? Like, that's not our job. Do you know what I'm saying? But could we have said, hey, this seems like we could be earning more interest? And you do see a shift, right, in what Urbana earned. And I have no idea what Champaign did because I can't figure it out. But I do feel like we baked in that level of transparency. I also want to say this. I think that it would have been nice if all of us had realized this earlier. Based on the chart that the auditor provided, over $900,000 of the interest that he is saying that we could have earned was this year. Is that correct? 2023? Okay. So I want to make sure that, like, we differentiate that there was an initial decision and then later things could have been moved. But it isn't like there was no investment. There was a solid investment, I think, decision that was made at the time, and it was only subsequently where we could have earned more interest. But again, it's not like we didn't earn any interest. It's we earned more than by the end of this year, we'll be over $600,000 of interest. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, that, like, not all of the money was in a bank account, because I feel like that's somewhat how it's been reported, and that's just simply not accurate. Jenny.
Just a quick, I guess, question based on the outburst from behind me just now. The auditor says that you were notified before others. Could you repeat? That wasn't in 2021, 22, or 23, right?
So
that was
this was, and again, it was around our second installment due date. I can't remember exact dates, and I did speak to my staff to try and find out from them. Do you guys remember? Because he never, like I said, he never comes into office, so it was a rare occurrence, and it was like, what's going on? And again, he asked me, hey, and I can't even remember the exact question. Asked me what I was doing with ARPA interests, and I was like, oh, well, I mean, I just moved into the CD because I wanted to get more interest on it, whatever. And he's like, well, you could have been earning like so much more on Illinois funds. And now, again, admittedly, I was a little bit harsh with him because at the time when he came into the office to talk to me about this, we're still waiting on reconciliations to review. So I was like, wait a second, what are you doing? You're talking about this when this is still outstanding? So yeah, I definitely could have been a little bit more diplomatic in the way that I dealt with him, but it was kind of more of a, what are we doing?
Yeah, like you said, your email was in July, so we're talking like, what, like
a month or
August,
so later.
September?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm like,
not
so-
3 years ago.
No, not 3 years ago.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the treasurer? Oh, Samantha.
As I've spoken with you and I've spoken with the auditor concerning this situation, I'm just going to be upfront and honest. I'm disappointed because he told me that you told him to stay in his lane was the harsh words that you used. There is so much tension in this building that we've been distracted from the county's business. The relationships have been severed because we're censoring the auditor. Regardless, if we're going to get a new auditor, we're going to eliminate his position, we have to work together. There is no ifs, ands, and buts about it in order for us to move forward. And I think this is where the tension comes in from the board. Oh, Chair Carter is defending the auditor. No, I'm defending his position because there need to be oversight on what's going on financially. Conveniently, our executive is not here this evening. I have a lot of questions for Steve, and I wanted to do it here because he doesn't answer my questions when I ask him in private. Okay? I know you didn't do this by yourself. I know for a fact that nothing shakes or moves around here without Steve knowing. And the fact that he's not here, that should speak volumes to constituents that's watching, because this form of government is not working, period. It's not. We have too many emotional beings on this board to carry out the county functions. I've been talking to very vocal to constituents in our community because we need to exercise our duties and be public servants in these spaces. What has happened is a clear sign of us not working together. It wasn't seen. Whenever it was seen, we're going to direct the anger towards the auditor when it was said, how it was said. That's irrelevant. It is. So I'm glad, I am very thankful that you were here to clear some of this up. I am not angry, I am disappointed because I've spoken with you before. Anytime we need to know something pertaining to your office, we should be notified before, and we were not. And so that's what I am in a little bit of disagreement before. We've had issues with your office, and you said that you would let us know beforehand, before anybody else. That I remember that from a previous meeting. And so this is where I'm trying to get the board to see where there was lack of communication. Now, some of the administrative staff, they choose not to communicate with me for those whatever purposes, because they're in those positions and they feel like that they can do that. But this is something clearly that should have been shared with the board, and everybody should be aware of what's going on with the county finances, and it did not happen, okay? Whether that's Dr. Furtado or Mr. Farney, the chair and the vice chair of the finance committee, there should have been some type of communication, and that did not happen. We're so quick to point out everybody else's flaws, but this was definitely a flaw, a problem that should have been brought to the forefront, and it was not. So that's my little 2 cents that I'm going to add on. I'm thankful for your, moving forward, what plans that you have in place. I think that we definitely need to bridge that gap of communication so we can move forward in a better, positive light, because, I mean, this is just, it's disappointing. It is disappointing. And I do understand as far as your aspect of asking the board for additional staff, and that didn't happen. I've seen people on the other side that said that you didn't need the additional staff. So I can't, like I said, fault you. The board should hold some responsibility too, because we didn't, before now, with the public safety sales tax, oh, you may get some additional staff. That's unacceptable. So I'm very thankful for your presence here tonight. Thank you.
Do you have any response?
Sorry, I didn't think there was a question. I think she was making a statement.
I will say, just as a point of information, the first time that I read the words Illinois Fund was in the newspaper. The first thing I did was call the treasurer. I will say the treasurer, anytime there is any issue in her office, always gives me a heads up, is the most proactive of any elected official, period, that I deal with. top to bottom in this county. And as soon as I knew that this was an issue, again, by reading it in the newspaper, I put it on the board agenda so that we could discuss it. JJ.
A couple of comments. First, it is refreshing to have an elected official come to us and take responsibility. That does not happen in this room often, and so thank you for doing that. The whole, first off, your investment policy idea or having a committee, I think that's a great idea. I think the treasurer should be very much in charge of that committee and do not allow outside influences affect that. So I think you're headed down the right path on that. You're absolutely correct. It does not need to have a board member on that. So please, continue down that path. I think you're 100% correct on that. And also one other thing, Executive Summers is on vacation. He told us that at the meeting last Monday. So none of this was on the agenda. He had no idea when he pre-planned a vacation. So to be singling him out and saying he's conveniently not here is absolutely false.
Microphone, please.
This wasn't important county
Point of
business?
You sometimes
order.
plan things.
Point of order.
And to be putting words into the executive's mouth. And the final thing I'm going to say, and then I'm done here, is I've known CJ for a little over a year now. Anybody that tries to tell me that Steve Summers is telling CJ Johnson what to do is an idiot.
We're going to everybody's going to dial it down. Because we got three more issues. This is a fun evening. One more thing that I wanted to say, and the reason I asked about the board representation is I do think that the board needs to discuss investments more specifically. In finance agenda, we discussed maybe putting it on the finance section of the board agenda on a biannual basis. So maybe what would be a good opportunity once you get your committee up and running is maybe have a representative of that committee and the treasurer come, and present, because I think one of my jobs, I think, as board finance chair, is to think about how the board engages all of these issues. And we have, as you know, a very decentralized form of government here in the county where there's different pools of authority in lots of different places. And the board trying to provide just, thoughtful oversight of all of that sometimes gets a little bit complicated. So that's why I was asking. And I do agree. I think it makes more sense. I agree with JJ that maybe having a board member on that committee doesn't really add anything to that committee, but maybe if we could hear about, hey, this is how investments are going twice a year, that seems to me like that would give us a chance for the board to weigh in if we thought there needed to be some of course correction. Although again, statutorily, the decisions are always going to be with the treasurer, and they're always going to be based on this policy, right? And security and liquidity are always going to be the number one and number two priorities. Aaron?
Yes, thanks. A few comments. First off, I'd like to echo JJ and some of the others basically in that thank you for stepping up and saying ultimately it falls on your lap. That isn't to say that, yes, as a county board, maybe any of us, all of us, however you want to say it, couldn't be asking more questions, looking a little farther deeper into it. Fact is, it's happened. As has been said, no, we did not truly lose money, but we didn't make as much. So thank you thank you for stepping forward and saying that. In this room as of right now, I think Diane and I are somewhat close in terms of tenure on the board, but right now I'm only second to Lorraine. Very rarely, if maybe once or twice, maybe before, do I remember the board getting into the, I guess you could say the minutia, I'll just put it that way, of where funds are truly invested. I think maybe, after the whole debacle, after the second, there are 2 treasurers back and maybe the replacement for her before CJ took over, maybe we got into that. So yeah, it isn't like it's something that just got dropped out of the county board's, I guess you could say, prerogative or agenda of looking at these every so often. It wasn't necessarily built in, and over the years, somehow it just dropped out, and and it got lost. No, it wasn't ever, every quarter that we looked at them, or every month or whatever. Again, not to say that we shouldn't be maybe looking deeper into it, but again, that's in the past. My biggest disappointment is just the way that it came out. The fact that, again, Ms. Furtado has indicated, I know Mr. Farney is vice chair of finance. Any of us board members, we weren't notified until basically it was out there in the public. The fact that the information came out, no, I'm not sad that the information came out. I don't know that anybody is. That is part of being transparent. I don't think CJ's even ultimately sad that the information is out there, because it happened. And that's being transparent. But the whole way that it came out, it would have been nice from my standpoint, again, had even just someone on the county board, whether, or the county board as a whole, whatever, hey, here's what we have, the information first, and then, yes, I mean, once you send it, especially if you send it to the full board, ultimately it is public knowledge. But the fact that it comes out in the paper, radio, flyers, campaign flyers first, that to me is the biggest disappointment about the whole thing. And that's my comments. Thanks.
Anybody else? Samantha?
I just have one question, because it was mentioned in the finance meeting about the bidding process and the bond rating. So could someone kind of explain that to the board?
We have that later on the agenda, but the bonds are
Okay.
later on the agenda. This is
Right.
just one. We have 4 financial issues. This is just one. But I think all of them are important. Thank you for your time. And do you have any other?
Only because I do want to make sure this is out there. Because I did hear what you said, Chair Carter, about, hey, me being a little bit too rough with George. I think the reason why I think I was, again, and I'll own up to it, I was upset because I'm like, we're still waiting on this from you, and you're coming to ask me about this thing. Now, of course, I still put a check mark in my mind. I was like, hey, let me go back and see what he's talking about, because regardless of how I feel, and everyone knows this, I don't have to like you to work with you. Like, there are a lot of individuals that I'm not excited about working with, but I will work with them, because at the end of the day, I'm just trying to get the work done. The same can't be said for most of the individuals that I'm dealing with most of the time. So while I hear what you're saying, and yes, again, I'm a little bit upset with myself for hurting his feelings to a certain extent, but at the same time, there's a part of me that's kind of like, at the same time, if I wasn't waiting on things to be done, that like, if we want to talk about watchdog or whatever, maybe I should be the watchdog and just start telling them all what's going on. But I'm like, but at the end of the day, I'm simply trying to just get the work done so I can keep it moving forward. That's where I'm at. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much for your transparency. Next, I have received a lot of questions from various board members about the status of our ACFR. The auditor is here. I don't know if anybody has any questions for him. I can give you a brief update. As you know, the goal is to have our external audit done by September 30th in order to make sure that we don't fall into any negative consequences, specifically with our grants. And that is one of the reasons that having it done by then is important. There's other reasons. Our book's closed, right? We're talking about the 2023 audit. we're, 10 months from then. I believe we owe the public transparency on, how we spend our money and that there's been an external review that says, yep, you did a good job, or here's things you could have done better. When the audit is delayed, it's very hard for the public to have that kind of oversight because, now you're going into the next year. But the grant piece is one of the most important pieces. The last communication the board received from the auditor indicated that a timeline that has not occurred, and I don't believe there's been any update from the auditor on that timeline. As of today, the ACFR, which is basically how this works, is we give that document to our external auditor. They review it. There's an internal review process and then a peer review process that takes about 2 weeks. And that, especially that piece of it, that is what it is. We have not, our piece is still not to the external auditor. So our work is not complete to give to the external auditor. There's deadlines. The first deadline is October 1st, and then it's 15 days later, and then 30 days later. So given that it's the 15th, and given you the timeline, we're going to go past, so all of you received that memo about consequences. So we are going to get to that 30-day consequence, and I'm hoping that we don't get any further beyond that. I did some of our external, I think we focus a lot about RPC. RPC, I've been in conversation with them. I want to mention it's not just RPC. We also just have grants that are part of the county. To give you an example, I was forwarded a message from the executive because Highway was corresponding about one of their highway grants, and they got a message that from the person at the state who said, "Oh, but I see that you're on a stop payment." And Mr. Blue was like, I don't know what this is. I'm going to have to send you to Mr. Summers, who then wrote back and said, hey, we did send you a memo that we did send. Admin did send a memo to all of the elected officials and department heads to let them know, hey, this was happening. And I think maybe Jeff didn't see it. So we sent another memo, and it said, if you are in a situation where the stop payment is impacting your ability to do something with your grant, please let us know, and we'll try to help you figure out if there's ways to navigate it. So let me give you another example. This is an RPC example. It's not just, is the money going to be delayed? There's other things you have to do with grants. So RPC, one of their WIOA grants, last week I got a message. They went into a new grant that they have, and they wanted to make a budget adjustment, change something in the way their budget was structured. And they were told, oh, you can't do that because you're on a FEIN lock, right? I asked Tammy Ogden and Delitzo to come up with a list of grants. A lot of grants, some of them, and I will say this, I've seen things in the press that are like, oh, LIHEAP is going to be shut down, and Head Start. That's not, no. There's certain grants that are so core to like serving vulnerable people that they don't shut them down altogether. Now, there are consequences on those grants. And you have all of that spelled out in your memo. So at some point, they stop letting RPC take administrative fees. At some point, there's more paperwork that they have to do in order to do any sort of, and already to get that, for the 15, I can't remember if it's like in between 15 and 20 grants that they basically got a stop payment waiver. That doesn't just happen by a magic wand. RPC had to ask for that, so that's work on them, right? But there's a lot of grants from RPC that don't get that waiver. And so what you have in front of you on the yellow sheet are the almost $20 million of grants that are not afforded that waiver. And you could see some of these, I'll be honest, I don't know what all the acronyms stand for. Now, that is not to say that that means that all of these grants are in instant financial jeopardy. Different departments will enforce the stop pay. You know, this is the state. We've all dealt with the state, right? So Some of them might be slower, and some of them might be faster in implementing the consequences. And it also matters the timing of expenditures, right? And so like if there's going to be drawdowns. So I've been in very close contact with RPC about liquidity. Do they have enough money to cover what they need? They felt like they were good, but every time I've talked to them, they felt like they were good as long as the grant, as long as the audit was done by the end of this month. It's not going to be. So I've said to them, if they do need any help with liquidity, like us doing some sort of ability for them to draw funds from us and then later on, move. I said, I'd appreciate that to be on the full board. I haven't heard from them. I think that they are going to be okay, but I'll know by the end of this week. And if they need help, we'll have it on the full board agenda, okay? So I wanted to sort of outline that. I've also started sitting in on, I sat in on the last monthly auditor call with the external auditor. I've spoken to the external auditor probably once a week just to get updates. And the person at RPC who's actually doing the ACFR has started CCing me on outstanding issues so that I can kind of keep up to date when he sends out, hey, this is what's going on. I'll be honest, I don't understand all of them. Some of them are like 17 letters in a row, and I'm like, that sounds complicated to me. But at least so that I have a sense of what's outstanding. And beyond that, I don't know what more to do. We've censored the auditor for not getting audits in on time. I've expressed that I think it's a serious issue. The board has expressed that it's a serious issue. Beyond that, if you said to me, hey, this is the structure that we're in, right? And I don't know what more we can do. If anybody has any suggestions, but I wanted to let everybody know that that's where we are. It won't be done by the end of this month. And that's reality. Does anybody have any questions for myself, or the auditor is still here? Jenny.
Okay, I saw on social media at one point the auditor was claiming that we're in some sort of grace period, but I don't know what that is or what that means. Is that something is that what you're talking about with the 15th, or?
So we sent you all a memo. I believe you all should have gotten the DCEO memo that outlines pretty specifically a certain subset of the grants. And again, these are RPC grants. It had the grant numbers on it, which maybe isn't the most useful thing, because unless we all live with RPC, we don't know what those numbers mean. But I know some of them are like LIHEAP and Head Start and some of those types of grants. They asked for and received a stop payment waiver. What that means is they'll still get the money. So the grants that are on here do not have that waiver, and the other grants, right, do.
Okay, that's what that is. Okay.
Yeah. Now,
got
the
it.
waiver does not mean that there is no consequences, right? I want that to be very clear, including and up to eventually loss of administrative fees for those grants, like the inability to draw those down, which, as we know, as RPC reminds us at every meeting that they come, is that most of their budget is, including their administrative budget, is that 7% or so that they take from grants for, right? That's the vast majority of their budget. I believe, and without having that memo in front of me, I believe that piece of those, for that doesn't kick into 60 days. And I'm hoping that, we're not that far out. Oh, somebody just handed me a phone that has it on there. Yeah. 60 days past due. If the audit is 60 days past due and or the audit Ingata is still delinquent, which ours is right now. The grantee will not be permitted to draw administrative expenses or program support for LIHEAP and IWEP grants, and may also be placed on a technical assistance plan, a TAP plan, or a corrective action plan, a CAP plan for CSBG. OCA will notify, just a lot of initials. So that's, so we are for sure going to hit we've already hit the late. We know we're going to be on a stop payment, except for the ones that got the waiver. We know that we're going to be on the more, I don't know, we really mean it, stop payment that's in 30 days. To be honest, I don't really see the practical difference between those two. And then I'm hoping we're not on the 60 days. As somebody who used to do grants, if I had ever been told that I was on an FEN lock when I was at the city of Indianapolis, I would have lost my mind. I cannot emphasize enough, I would have lost my mind. And if I was told I had to do a TAP plan on one of my grants, I cannot emphasize how upsetting that would be for somebody who has a grant. It is to dismiss it and say it's not a big deal. It is an act that's like a bogeyman that they put out there so that you don't end up in that situation. That is not something that you want to have happen. Yeah.
Follow up, I guess, to that was that you also was saying that it would for sure be submitted by next week's full board meeting, and I guess that you're saying that's definitely not going to be the case as well.
Yeah, I've already been in conversation with the external auditor. They were supposed to come and present the full audit on the next board meeting, and obviously we've pushed that back because there's nothing to present. So we're putting it on the November board meeting and crossing our fingers. Aaron?
Another point, 2 years ago, we were basically in the same situation. I remember from back then, I don't know if it's been mentioned this go around or not, but with things, with the grants and the timing issues and not getting the audit done in time, not only is it affecting the grants currently, when and if RPC or the county goes some of these reoccurring grants that we, reapply for, and we generally we receive them. If everything's up to snuff, you could say, everything's good. Basically, this is a very simplified. Basically, you kind of get rubber stamped. Hey, you're good to go, you're good to go, you're good to go, you get your grant again. Well, with this timing issue, it's kind of like, things aren't quite so smooth in Champaign County. Maybe you don't get that rubber stamp. Maybe we're gonna, make a few extra requirements on some financials or whatever. Look harder into your money. You don't get put maybe to the top of the. I'm throwing maybe to the top of the pile. You get just shuffled in with everybody else. So this affects potentially other future grants. So that's just another fact for everyone to keep in mind. Thanks.
A standard question on most federal grant applications, and again, a lot of state grants, a lot of grants that we receive are federal monies that are parked at the state in block grants based on population, and then allocated out, transportation money, housing money, a lot of money. That's how it works. A standard question on those at the beginning of the grant is something along the lines of, have you ever been, and it's usually in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, been placed on an FEIN lock or a stop payment, some sort of, and they're not asking that question for their health. I do want to afford the auditor the same courtesy that I afforded the treasurer. Is there anything that you would like to say in response? And if you do so, please come to the front desk.
You insist on that.
I can't see you unless I turn
It's for the
around,
camera, for the people
Okay,
at home, please.
No problem. My first comment would be, you essentially, I agree with you in the essentials of your description of the whole process, where the timing of the audit does affect the flow of grant money. The state encourages smaller entities to get their audits done by applying these. So they're not unknown, they're not uncommon. So the only thing I would ask is that you maintain perspective that this is not unusual and that it's a way of the state keeping the pressure on to make sure that people don't drag their feet forever. I mean, the consequences are sequential and they increase in severity. Jenny Lakshin asked about the grace period and what the meaning of it is. The 15-day grace period was one such that had I been able to present the audit at the October board meeting with the external auditor, there would have been no enforcements, of course. That would have meant that the audit had been returned before anything could be delayed. My information in talking to RPC's fiscal director, whom you know as my former chief deputy, a very capable fellow who's doing his best on this and whose interests are aligned with mine. We both have a very vested interest in making sure the audit comes out timely. It's his division, RPC. So I'm very confident in him that he's doing a very good job. 60 days we will not get to 60 days. My prediction is that DCEO will not impose even the first line of delays in many of the grants. DCFS won't do so for at least 2 months. We won't get anywhere near that. And as you did say, those with payment justifications are held harmless. So there's some money at stake. Worst case scenario, you would have what we would have gotten on November 1st, on December 1st, along with the December 1st check. The reserves of, the same way the General Corp has reserves, which could allow us to loan money to RPC, RPC has reserves. And they're far more ample than the amount of money you'd have to wait on for 1 month. And that's all I'm very confident is what we could potentially be facing.
Just a point of clarification, because I don't think everybody's living with this as closely as maybe I am or JJ is.
Or me.
Or you. So you aren't preparing the ACFR?
No, not me personally. I did write the letter of transmittal. Last year, I did concentrate on writing the notes to the financial statement, the basic financial. I don't know if you would think it unusual for a chief deputy to do much of the compilation of the ACFR. I don't have a chief deputy. I would say that her job has been split in half. The audit half has gone to my former chief deputy, who is on contract. I will come under budget this year. Because of that, I'm not done. And the half that has to do with the constant workflow in Munis is something that I'm doing. This is by arrangement with Orion. I was more involved in the ACFR last year than this year, just because of his preference, and I respect that. By the way, it was in Munis, just to clarify an earlier issue that the treasurer brought up. I did not fish for any mistake she made. And I'm not upset with her for thinking that. As Chair Carter pointed out, there's so much suspicion. The temperature rises, and people have a lot of false impressions about me. I think you would agree. Many of you know things that just aren't true. You just don't know which things they are. And the same thing, I probably sometimes overestimate the intention of faulty behavior toward me that may not at all be intentional. And in this case, the treasurer thought that it was because of the email that I was prompted to look at what interest she was getting from the ARPA tranche. Not at all. I was in Munis with the workflow that my immediately previous chief deputy auditor had every day. I was in Munis every day. You do not need Munis to show that you're at your desk every day, but it's certainly proof that you are. I do want to point that out. I've heard too much nonsense about how I'm indifferent to this job that I trained for at twice the age most people get a master's in accountancy. I've shown energy. But I was booking interest income. I was booking interest from all the different accounts. There's 25 entries. And when you look at highways, and they're getting 8 times the interest that ARPA does, and ARPA's got 24 million in there instead of 3 million, you have to wonder why. It just was staring me in the face. Now, the average staffer doesn't think about that. They just want to make sure they record that which is. It is an elected official who's thinking about the taxpayer, who has the incentive to think about whether or not it's adequate. And it's the actuary that is capable of coming up with the chart that I provided. Go ahead.
A couple of, Jenny, and then I have like 3 follow-up questions.
I don't know, maybe somebody else was going to ask what I asked, but when you felt that CJ wasn't responsive to your comments on the interest that we could have been earning, who else in the county did you go to before going to the News, Gazette, and radio and your campaign pieces?
Well, you act like I did it right away. And
I'm just asking, yeah.
Okay, no problem. You're always interested in how things get in the press. The deeper question, of course, is the fact that it's revealed.
Actually, no, my question was who else did you go to at the county before going to the press?
Nobody.
Oh, why not?
Because I was waiting to see if the situation would get rectified. I book interest every month. I thought that after our discussion, surely she would find some vehicle. So she had some
I just, in my own work, if I'm not getting a response from the person I'm directly reaching out to, I feel like I would go to somebody else first and say, I'm not getting.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
So we're equals, we're peers. Steve's our peer, he's not our superior. Our boss, that's who I went to, the voting taxpayer.
Okay, I have a couple of specific. So we're kind of going back, which maybe is not the most productive thing, but to the interest part of it. So what you're saying is that your staff was booking that interest, and they didn't have the expertise to notice that we could have been earning more interest.
It's not a matter of expertise. It's the trade-off between my repose and analyzing what I'm doing and the hurly-burly of making sure that everything gets recorded. I know what you're doing. I'm proud of my staff, but I'm the only professional in the office. I just saw a letter to the editor from the League of Women Voters saying that you don't need an elected auditor because of the professionals in the office, and I'm the sole CPA, and that is why I thought about it a little more profoundly. Is that a surprise? I hope not.
No, actually, I don't think it's a surprise. My question is, knowing your credentials and the credentials of your staff, and let me be clear, because I know that members of your staff and members of the county across the board watch these meetings, and I have a great amount of respect for the work that your staff does and the hard work that they do every day and the things that they bring to our attention. But knowing that, in retrospect, do you wish that you had provided more insight into oversight of the investment funds so that this could have been found sooner? Because
absolutely.
And you own that?
Absolutely.
And you take responsibility for that?
I want to mitigate it. I want to mitigate it a bit.
Of course.
The first time I looked at DARPA funds was prior to the accession of Cassandra Johnson to being treasurer, and you know why. It was because I wanted to make sure that overwhelmed treasurers were doing the right thing. And it was also during COVID, and we got the ARPA money. So the ARPA money came in 2021. So the first tranche came before CJ was elected. I looked to see what Illinois Funds was offering, and what I was surprised to note was that it was below 0.1%. So after I looked at that, I thought, this is a low interest rate environment. I mean, what's the problem if you're leaving the money in a checking account? I didn't really give it too much thought after that. And then ultimately, you think it's not your wheelhouse. You would imagine that those who are charged with investing go ahead and do it. Had I not had such a tumultuous year in my confrontation with the board, with my own party, with the smear campaign, I think I would have come up with this assignment for myself a year earlier. That would have saved the $900,000.
Back to the part of the agenda that we're actually on,
Yeah.
the ACFR. I'm assuming, since you're not doing the work, that you're overseeing it. Can I ask you some specific questions on status of specific items? The first one that I have is the drainage rec file. Where is that in terms of completion?
Drainage rec file is, of course, the duty of the treasurer, and I'm unaware of whether it's completed at this time.
Okay. Next up, the collateral spreadsheet.
The last, I will say, I'm not willing to go further on specific items. You yourself said you barely understood what they were. I will say that, just a moment, I had a list fairly recently, but I have not had an update as of today, okay? So let me have a chance to talk to my former chief deputy auditor. I think you're talking about external PBCs, not the ACFR itself. These are things that the external auditor needs to complete everything. They come from other departmental partners, and that's why you have to understand that when you talk about late audits, you have to be careful, because the county is what's being audited, and it's an open question who's the one behind on their work. So
just to reiterate, if I have any other specific questions for the components that are part of what we need in order for the external auditor to complete the ACFR, you cannot give me a specific update on those specific questions at this time.
You're using the word ACFR interchangeably with the audit itself. The ACFR is when the person I have hired is done with it.
Okay, this is the list from the person that you hired, the outstanding items that he needs in order to have the external auditor do their work. Do you understand what I'm saying? Can you speak to those specific items at this meeting?
I think they are distinct from his submission of the ACFR itself.
Okay, so we're done with that line of questioning, I guess. Ed and then Jennifer.
George, I'm just going to be really blunt. I don't want to hear a whole lot of other stuff about it, Mr. CPA. Why isn't it done?
Wow. That's all you want to know. What makes you think that anyone's going to get a specific assignment done without ever being late due to any kind of external circumstance? Just a moment. Did you read what was written in the memo? The memo explained it. I noticed certain anomalies after we did a rebuild on the underlying spreadsheet. So if something like that happens to come up every 3 or 4 years, that might make you late for a couple of weeks. I'm doing the work, at least half the work of another individual that I would normally have, the chief deputy, and that's going to cause delays. I don't think I'm in a position to replace that person. You've got, that person would not even know who their boss is. You've got an eliminationist referendum plus an election. So what can I tell you? There was the anomalies that I discovered in the underlying spreadsheet, and that takes time to resolve, especially when everyone says this, and I don't like to hear it, but in my case, for a moment, understaffed.
Well, then I'll have a follow-up then.
Sure.
Evidently, you don't have it under control, which is your usual comment when asked about anything, is I have it under control.
No. I said it's well in hand, and it's well in hand. You're not going to face...
Dates are due. And things are supposed to be done by those dates. You know those dates, and you don't allow enough time to get it done.
Wow. So you've never heard of penalties, for late penalty? Have you ever paid a late penalty in your life for anything?
Yes,
Okay.
not very often, though.
Okay, I'm telling you, we're working assiduously. We will minimize any lack of smoothness, and whether there's paperwork needed for extensions, or even just the float that we give up because some interest could have been accrued if you wait for, I don't know, 1 month on some grant flows.
I'm just tired of hearing from you. I'm the professional and I'm not done.
Would you prefer non-professional?
No, I'd quit. I'd really like to not hear excuses for somebody to put their head down,
I've
go to
never-
work and finish it.
I'm working on it. Ed, I don't know why you don't understand my assiduity.
I'm sorry, what does that mean?
Jennifer?
You're never going to believe this. Thank you for finding lost money or money that we could have had. I wish you would have told us sooner. Now to bring it back to what we're talking about. I have a request of you, and I think you can do it. I really do think you can do it. Ultimately, it's up to you that these things get done. I get you're saying it's this department, that department, this. My ask of you, go be a pest. Be a pest and get this stuff. People fear the auditor and other businesses and organizations because the auditor is scary and the auditor comes and demands the things and shuts things down. The auditor doesn't say, it's a late penalty. That is some gentle parenting right there, there's no consequences, and be a pest. Go out there and get it done.
Your microphone turned off.
Me. No, Jen, thank you. Sometimes you need to hear that. You need encouragement to be that pest. I mean, it's not always comfortable, but thanks for the license.
But also, Ms. Johnson came in here and took responsibility for a mistake, and that there's a penalty coming. That's not something that year after year is just a thing. No, we don't want any. We don't want any penalty.
Of course we don't. And we don't want to lose. We don't want to lose opportunities and interest income. I did not say anything about financial penalty. I was asking.
And that is on. The auditor is ultimately responsible, professional or otherwise. The auditor is ultimately responsible for supplying our external auditor with the materials. So go get it.
Yeah.
Go get them from people. Please be a pest.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Thanks. My only point was, Ed just came off like no one in the history of the world has ever been late on anything before, and I reacted.
Thrice in 6 years is not no one's ever done it. Please go out and get what we need so we can be late with fewer penalties.
Ed?
Just to be clear, you're the one who's saying that you're the professional and that you've got it under control and that you know what you're doing, and all I'm hearing is excuses of why you haven't got it done.
No, it's an explanation.
So that's all we have to say.
Ed, something triggers you about the word professional.
Aaron?
Thanks. Another comments, and Mr. Danos can reply as far as I'm concerned if he chooses to. Kind of a follow-up to Mr. Sexton and Ms. Locks. Professional CPA, again, second only in this room currently, second only to Ms. Cowart. I just find it interesting how this issue has only occurred under one certain auditor.
Not true.
And
okay, let me inform you the history.
And your response is you're a professional, but yet the others who I guess weren't professional, didn't have CPAs, got it done.
Okay, Aaron, if you look at JJ's last ACFR, it was dated December 7th. And if you look at the one that, and I don't want to pick on anybody, but you're kind of pushing me against the wall. So please, take it with good humor. Diane did not complete her audit. I didn't know that. Nobody talked about it. And I was told about it when I first took office. And then I got it out the door on December 31st. So you are wrong to say that.
Actually, I did a deep dive because I've done a lot of deep dives. Audits were on time. There was one time the audit was late. It was the year Mr. Farney was elected, and I think because of the office transition, it was a couple of weeks late. And then there were 2 audits that were late, both were turned in December. I called up Mr. Farney and I said, hey, is this true? And the first thing he said was, yes, it was late. And that was my responsibility. Full stop.
Okay, you know what? I'll
And-
take full responsibility
and
too,
then-
but I don't want you to give the public the false impression that I'm uniquely
No, wait,
late.
and let me
okay?
finish, and then I got you, JJ. And then after that, our 2018 audit transmittal letter was July 8th, 2020. Our,
The year of COVID.
the 2018 transmittal letter was
Excuse
July
me,
8th, 2020.
In 2020
Wait.
was COVID.
So no, wait, let me
2018
be-
You can't get an audit done in the middle of the year.
Excuse
of
me.
the year that you're auditing, clearly.
So wait. Let me be clear what I just said. That's our 2018 audit, not our 2019 audit. 2018 audit, which should have been submitted September 19th, 2019, was submitted 2020.
I am very much aware of that.
And then our 2019 audit was submitted not in 2020 at all, on July 1st, 2021. Our 2020 audit was submitted, we got a little bit closer, March 18th, 2022. And then
Is
the
that a
last.
question?
No, it's
Oh.
not a question. No, it's not a time.
So you're
But in
using
terms
it for
of,
little speeches. I thought it was my time.
no, I brought you up here for questions, but board could also comment at any
Okay,
time they
all
want to.
right. Go ahead.
Mr. Farney.
I was just going to say that I think I'm ready to hear about the bonds.
Microphone.
Sorry, I clicked it too many times. Does anybody else have any questions? It's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bonds. I wanted to give you all an update on the bonds because we voted on something and it changed since we voted on it. I don't want to belabor the point. Travis put together an exceptional memo. In part because of the delayed audit, we had to delay our timeline on refunding the 2014 courthouse bond, and that changed the landscape of the bonds. Travis, can you summarize just the third paragraph on your memo, sort of basically what happened in terms of the new, because the board voted on this and the estimate from Raymond James changed, so I wanted to make sure the board was aware.
Yeah, so originally, the bids were supposed to go out on October 8th, and the winning bid would have been selected on October 8th. Speaking with bond counsel and the municipal advisors, since the audit was running behind, we pushed that back to give time because rating agencies like a finalized current audit, and the investors potentially could change their bids based on whether an audit's completed or what the current audit looks like. So we pushed that back, and then when it was discovered that the audit was not going to be completed by the timeline from the memo dated September 19th, with bond counsel and Raymond James, we went ahead and moved the bids back up. They're taking place tomorrow, so not as early as as the 8th. We did that, so the earlier it's done, the less chance there are of market conditions changing. Last week, estimated rates went up 10 to 20 basis points, so that changed their new projection. Whether the bids took place on the 8th or not, there's no way to concretely know how much that would potentially affect the bids. But for sure, being a week later, it did reduce the estimated savings by about $28,000.
Thank you. I also wanted I'm going to read this last paragraph because I want this to I want the board to hear it, and I think it's very important. On the next page, it says this: the county maintained the A1 rating from Moody's rating agency. So congratulations to us. We worked really hard to get there. We made, I think, really prudent financial decisions to get there. And thank you for Travis for his work on going through this whole process. This was in part due to a currently healthy economy supported by a large university, low long-term liabilities ratio and fixed costs, available fund balance and liquidity, and conservative budgeting and planning by management. Negative impacts were lower than medium in the same rating tier, so that AA1 rating that we have, income and wealth. And I'll be honest, that one, in all of my conversations about this, is not something we can do anything about, and that probably means this is as high as our bond rating is ever going to go. We have a lot of poor people in Champaign County, largely due to the high student population and lack of diversity of revenue sources, which is not unusual for government entities that aren't home rule. The biggest factor that could lead to a future drop is a decrease in overall fund balance, which is already significantly lower than other entities in the same rating tier. And then going down to the last sentence of the last paragraph, the county's fund balance was nearly half of the median of what other entities in the same rating tier have for their fund balance percentage based on this calculation. So for our peers that have that AA1 rating, just to be blunt, our fund balance is not very impressive. And so if we are making decisions to spend down that fund balance, I want you all to keep that in mind, that that was probably the weakest part. We have high liquidity. Our debt ratio is really good. We have a conservative budgeting model. We've done all the things that we could. We got our fund balance up to a decent amount. If we start spending that down, right, eventually they're like, you don't belong in that tier anymore. And then that has profound impact on how we borrow and how we finance as a county. Okay? Yes.
Clarification, I wouldn't say that was the weakest point. The things that are out of our control, like not being home rule, income levels, though, so I just want to clarify that.
I'm glad you corrected that. The weakest point that we control, right? All those other things, liquidity, debt ratio, conservative, we also have control of those things and we're doing good. The weakest thing that we can control is our fund balance. Does that make sense? Please keep that in mind. Hopefully people will stop saying, let's spend our fund balances down. Okay. Yes.
I want to echo a comment that's been made by the board member, Mr. Pugh, before. I just got this today. I don't know about bonds. I've made that very clear that I'm learning. But when you ask questions, board members say you're dumb. That's why a lot of questions are not being asked, because I'm not the only one. I would have liked this earlier and sooner, so we would have had time to overlook this. Can we stop this, please? I mean, when we have information, I think it should be given in a timely manner so board members can overlook the information. Our table has just been overloaded with papers and papers. There's no way that we can overlook all of this and make a sensible decision at the time of the meeting. I know this is discussion only, but I'm just saying, please keep that in mind. Thank you.
So you could speak for.
Okay, sorry. One of the reasons that market conditions change every single day, so I was trying to make sure the most recent estimate was included in the memo.
Yeah, so we're working with bond counsel. When they give us their new estimate, he put the memo together and then gave it to us. So that's why we got it today, because if he gave it to us last week, their estimate wouldn't have been what's in here. Right. So the idea for this was you get it, and then if you have questions, please follow up with me, follow up with Travis. Literally, this was written today, a couple of hours, you know what I'm saying? So I do hear you, and I actually do dislike having a ton of paper on the thing, but for this case, this is based on a number that, like, it actually matters that we got today's number. It's the best estimate of what's going to happen before it goes out tomorrow. Like, we're doing the refinancing tomorrow. All right, one last, anybody else for Travis? All right, one last thing. I wanted to mention, the board has talked quite a bit in here about, it seems like we're paying a lot of 2023 bills late in 2024. So I did a little bit of research over the weekend, or 2 weekends ago, and then I sent this out in the board packets to everybody, is that, and I believe, is that fiscal year 2023, and I think I CC'd the board chair, and you can see who I CC'd on it, it is actually quite alarming. We've had 49 bills that should have been paid in 2023, paid in 2024. A core financial policy is that, for transparency with the public, that you pay your bills in the year that they happened. Also, we don't want board members or anybody else getting cornered and saying, hey, where's my check? A lot of the people that do business with the county, they expect to get paid. They're small businesses. They're, independent contractors. They can't be sitting out there waiting for us to, in some cases, it's more than a year. It's not one department, it's across the county. We have a very decentralized bill paying system, and that's why I sent this to the auditor. I sent this to the auditor on October 6th. I never received any reply. He clearly got it because I received a reply, a very lengthy reply, from somebody in the circuit clerk's court's office explaining why they had some late bills in September, but I haven't heard from anybody else. So here's my suggestion, and I want to hear what y'all think about it. And it's over $200,000. The year before we had one, as far as I could tell. That's a pretty steep increase. So I don't know why. Are we understaffed? Are people undertrained? Are the bills falling in a crack behind the desk? What I would like to suggest is, from now, for like maybe the next 6 months, although there won't be any in January and February, so now to the end of the year and then picking back up in March, if there is something on purchases not following purchase order that is under this category, the department head or elected official from whom it's under, I would like them to submit a memo to the board about why. Does that seem, and like maybe that will get out the notice that we're serious about it, and then maybe that would also help us understand why, because my thing is I don't know why, and I don't know how to provide any oversight without knowing why. Does that seem like a good plan? Done.
Two thoughts. One, can we require that? Number one. Number two, if the answer to that is yes, why don't we ask them to come and explain it? And that, to me, we saw 2 elected officials today come and take a seat there. And we saw 2 very different versions of holding themselves accountable. And I think it's a good idea to say, hey, part of the culture of this county is that you're accountable for the job that you're supposed to do. And I guess I'm in favor of a memo. I'm in favor of asking them to come in person.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. Is that something y'all want to do? Yeah.
To Don's point, though, can we require it when we've had it made very clear that we can't provide oversight to elected officials and they can run their offices how they choose?
We could ask, and I think the vast majority would come. I mean, I do. I mean, unless they had a conflict, they might send somebody or send a memo. Yeah. JJ, sorry.
I think a memo is probably the best thing. A lot of times these are things that, it's not always things on the purchase not following policy, are not always things that are paid from the wrong fiscal year. Sometimes it's we had to pay interest because a frontline employee used the credit card and they didn't request for it to be tax-free, and so we paid 37 cents or something like that. We don't need somebody to come here for that. So I would suggest, let's let's just ask for an explanation from the elected official or department head, and I think that would be sufficient for us to understand what's going on.
And let me be clear, I was only suggesting we ask for that memo for this specific issue. I mean, we could ask for all of them, but this specific issue is the one that seems endemic to me. So therefore, this is the one that had a 49 times increase in 1 year. Yeah, I mean, I don't want somebody to forget to and accidentally pay interest on a credit card, but that's pretty self-explanatory. Why did an invoice not get paid for a year and a half? I would kind of like to understand what's going on there. Does that make sense? All right. I'm sorry. I know that was long, and I apologize, and I'm sure you all have better things to do. My baseball team is in the ALCS, and I'm not even looking at my phone. Items on the finance consent agenda are A1, A2, A3, C.
Stephanie, there's still.
Closed session. I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C11 to consider litigation that is pending against or on behalf of Champaign County and litigation that is probable or imminent against or on behalf of Champaign County. I further move that the following individuals remain present. Assistant State's Attorney Joel Fletcher. Is our State's Attorney going to stay with us? State's Attorney Julia Reeds, Director of Administration Michelle Jett, Director of Finance Travis Woodcock, Recording Secretary Megan Robeson.
We have to move.
Vanich Theronat,
Yes.
Coert,
Yes.
Esri,
Yes.
Farney,
Yes.
Furtado, Greer,
Yes.
Locke,
Yes.
Lakshin,
Yes.
Owen, Pugh,
Yeah.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Sexton, Smith,
Yes.
Storr,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Are you okay if I start roll call? Vantage Theorenet?
Yes.
Cowart? Esri? Here. Farney?
Here.
Furtado? Greer?
Here.
Locke?
Here.
Lokshin?
Here.
Owen? Rodriguez?
Here.
Rogers?
Here.
Sexton? Smith?
Here.
Store? Taylor?
Here.
Carter?
Here.
All right, resolution, I'm going to get there. Approving amended judgment in 2008L202. Mr. Farney, Carolyn second. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. I'm going to ask that this be not put on the consent agenda. To Ms. Carter's point, I do think the public has an interest in this, and I think it should just be on the full board as well. All right, items to be put on the consent. A1, A2, A3, C2, C3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, D1, E1, F1, the end. I'm done.
Other business. Can I get a motion for the approval of closed session minutes, September 10th, 2024? First by Locke, second by Ms. Beth. Open for discussion.
If there's discussion, we go into closed session.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And can I get a motion for adjournment? Mr. Sexton first, second, Beth. Open for discussion? No. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, same sign. And that is the end. Have a great evening.